It's a little more balanced. Thank you, Supi. Okay, good morning again. So today I want to talk about how we practice the Buddha way together. I mean, what else do I talk about? But I want to talk about this in the context of the world we have now. It's actually not a different world than the one we had a week ago, but it also is. So for many, this is a deeply challenging time. And we wonder, where do we turn? What do we do? What sustains and supports us? So these are questions that are always alive to us, but I think can be alive to us in particular when things challenge or at odds. And we answer this individually and as a community. So just before I came, I was thinking about a teaching that I did up in Berkeley yesterday, and one of the texts that I use is by a Jodo Shin priest named Naoki Nabashima. He's a professor in Kyoto, Japan. Quite a lovely man. And he wrote a wonderful paper called Shinran's Approaches Toward Bereavement and Grief, which I think tells us something important here. So I didn't include this in my notes, but I just want to give you a rough idea of what we're talking about here. He's specifically talking about grief, but I think challenge of any kind that may include grief. It was aptly addressed by this. And one of the reasons I like to teach this from this particular text is because it tells us something about not only how to manage something like grief, but also that we can turn to the teachings to guide us in how to manage our lives, how to work with our lives. So Shinran Shonin, the founder of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in Japan, wrote a short piece on grief. And one of the first things he says is, we should not criticize people who are lamenting in sadness. When you are sad, you do not have to hold back your tears. So he's saying, if you have an emotional response to something, you don't need to cut it off or tell yourself, if you're going to be a good Buddhist, you shouldn't have those feelings or whatever the feelings are, it's fine to let them out in an appropriate way and that they should be respected. This is very much in line with our teachings. When we're disturbed, be it sadness, anger, whatever, we find a way to express it. And that should be a part of it. The second thing he says is, in terms of comforting someone, one should never comfort mourning people by adding more sadness to their grief. You should not let yourself fall deeper and deeper into sadness. So there's a balancing act here. You should find what uplifts. Now, the first time I saw him give this talk in Kyoto, he was giving this talk, and he reached there's this thing called sake as boryo, meaning anxiety removers. He reached down underneath the lectern and he pulled out this big bottle of sake and stuck it on the table. He's not saying that you should go get drunk. This is the idea that when you're meeting with someone, you should pour them a little sake, not too much, just a little until they have a smile on their face. You should pour some as a comfort until the person smiles, then stop and leave them to their, not abandon them, but bring them up. So this is telling us, yes, allow your tears, allow your whatever your response is, and then find comfort. Bring yourself some peace. And then the third aspect that Shinran tells us is that we should have a solid foundation established within your own mind, a solid foundation beyond birth and death. This tells us that we should look deeply in this time to what is our foundation. What do the teachings in particular have to tell us? You can, Shinran says, you can transcend sorrow, not by getting rid of it, but by incorporating it. When the foundation of our mind and heart has been established beyond our death. This is pretty challenging, but so when you're sad, you do not hold back your tears. However, you should not let yourself fall deeper and deeper into sadness, or deeper and deeper into anger, or deeper and deeper into resentment, or whatever it is. This process provides a path to reflect on who we are and what's important to us. And gradually, we return to the solid foundation and deepen the solid foundation that's within our own mind and heart. There's a poem he recited by Kobayashi Isa. Many of you know Isa's poetry. This one in particular. A bitter persimmon, bitterness itself turns naturally into sweetness. A bitter persimmon, bitterness itself turns naturally into sweetness. So, but I'm going to continue with my other remarks, but I want you to consider this wonderful, wise teaching from great master Shinran, and perhaps reflect on it in your life. So if we think about this, first, we turn to our practice, our Zazen practice, and the practice that we express as we go about our days. We go deep and we find the practice beneath our ideas, the practice at the root of our being, the one that becomes clear to us when our usual answers are not enough. When we find ourselves stopped dead in our tracks, when we search for something that is tangible, alive, sustaining in our own hearts and in our lives with others. This practice, the one we find in this way, is a way of living and being that's always there. It's always there. It's not absent. And sometimes when things are easy, we catch a glimpse of it. But when things are difficult or challenging, when we need it, we dig and we dig and we dig again until it becomes us. When we do this, we find that sadness breaks us open. Fear drives us to find what is fearless. Anger challenges us to turn it into discerning wisdom without a hint of hatred or harm. Darkness causes us to see with new eyes. We don't turn away or hide from any of it. Instead, we find a way with it. We find new ways to make real our deepest values in our own hearts and lives, in our Sangha, and in the world. We know that our suffering and the suffering of others and our freedom from suffering and the freedom from suffering of everyone is never separate. We're in this together, and that includes everyone, which can be a little difficult sometimes. And always our deepest knowing guides us. So we take it seriously. We simplify, we come together, we live out our path of Buddha with all beings. Our Zendo here is a place of refuge and mutual support. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. I'm talking to you too. So it's a place where we bring all that we are and we find sustenance and joy and courage and a way forward and welcome, a deep welcome to anyone and everyone who would share this path of wisdom or is interested in it, or just happens to wander in the door off the street sometime, like the young couple that was sleeping in the parking lot and came into Zazen one morning. What a delightful pair they were. All beings share this world with us. In this way, our Zendo, this place, is a kind of home base for our lives. From it, what we value radiates. It radiates out in simple ways, in profound ways. Buddha, we could have a rock up there. We could have anything that represents awakening, that reminds us of awakening. Buddha sits on the altar all the time, day and night. Never jumps off and goes and has a cup of coffee, right? Or if they do, we don't notice it. So awakening sits in the center of the Zendo, sits in the center of our lives at all times, inviting us to wake up to what is most real about us and the world. And each of us in our ordinary lives also has a place, a portable place in us, kind of like a hotspot, you know? That's right? Hotspot. So that you can access the internet anywhere. So we have our own spiritual hotspot. No matter where we go, we can access the web of wisdom teachings and the web of compassion and the awakening of the Buddha all the time. It's inviting us all the time to express what's most deeply valuable and true about us and everyone else. So if we look carefully at our lives, we discover in this way that we matter, that what we do matters, and that what we are matters. We're not perfect. We're not always attuned to what is needed in any given situation. We err a lot. But our commitment to living a path with humility and grace makes a difference. The teaching of interdependence is real. We are intimately connected beyond our imagining. And we can trust that showing up with kindness, with patience, with clarity, with courage, with tenacity and dedication makes a difference. It brings something alive in the world. We find ways to sustain ourselves in that way, to nourish and support those lives, our lives, living in a way that brings us its own energy. But we also seek things that have meaning for us. So, for example, we might turn to our personal ancestors and see the ancestors in our wider culture. The many that have found their way before us through difficulties. This tradition would not be here if it were not for immigrants who brought it with them and brought over priests to hold the tradition alive through great hardship. We would not be sitting here together if that were not true. So our gratitude is boundless. If we look at our Zen ancestors, we see that they sustained the Dharma in really terrible times. We are in this lineage. We are in the lineage of beings who brought light, tenacity, and ability to engage. So when we do that, we're not drawn into confusion or aggression or abandoning what is central to us. We bind ourselves with care and respect and kind speech and courageous action to this principle of interconnection and dedication. We rest when we need to rest. We turn to good friends and the human and non-human beings that sustain us. We sit zazen and study and listen to the Dharma. We have tea, we laugh, we ask questions, we go deeper, and we live this life of Sangha, immediate Sangha and greater Sangha. We find meaning and a sense of gratitude in simply giving this life of engaged everyday practice. It fuels our life and our capacity to live it. So this is the Bodhisattva path, right? We're born into this earth as the whole of the earth. So from the beginning, that's the truth of our life. And then, we grow up and we start this and that and making discriminations. That's not a problem, except that we can forget who we are. We pretty much habitually forget who we are. So we don't lose who we are, we just forget it. And then one thing we can do is just sit down in the middle of the mess. Just sit down. And we come to know we're sitting in the midst of this relationship with the whole of reality. We hear the birds outside. We see our thoughts flying around like birds, our emotions coming and going, our stomach grumbling. And then we get up. And when we get up, we don't stop our practice, but we engage in a way that has wisdom and connection. We sit and return to the whole self, knowing that we can't decide ahead of time what that is. And then we come to trust the reality of it, the reality and sacred nature of that wholeness. So Kobun Chino Roshi said, too much talk about Zazen is not so good for you. It is impossible to teach the meaning of sitting. Until you really experience it and confirm it by yourself, you cannot believe it. It has tremendous depth. And year after year, this gorgeous world of shikantaza appears. Shikantaza is Soto Zen meditation. It's up to you to cultivate it. Because you are Buddhas yourself, you can sit. It's up to you to cultivate it. But because you are Buddhas yourself, you can sit. So we sit, we entrust ourselves to that place, wherever it is, in a park bench, in the Zendo, at work, for 5 minutes, for 40 minutes, for 7 days, 10 days, whatever it is. We entrust ourselves to that place, that time, that openness, that practice. A lot of help, but a lot of talk doesn't help us. This is Buddha yourself sitting. But it doesn't end there, and this is so important. We get up, we engage, we pay attention, we walk and talk and connect. We're not drawn by aggression, confusion, or if we are, we come back. We see distinctions, we make choices, but we don't lose track of that wholeness. We chant, we bow, we study, we talk together here, we come to know the depths of who we are, really, and then we express it in our lives. Friendship, kindness, respect. And boy, it can be tough sometimes. Very tough. But that's our job. And there's joy in it. Soon after, I think it was Wednesday morning when it was clear what was coming down, Shinshu recalled this quote that we both like a lot and sent it out. This is John Lewis Bodhisattva. He said, do not get lost in a sea of despair. Be hopeful, be optimistic. Our struggle is not the struggle of a day, a week, a month, or a year. It is the struggle of a lifetime. Never, ever be afraid of making some noise and get in good trouble, necessary trouble. Yeah. So there's something about this foundation, this establishing our minds beyond birth and death, that allows us to express ourselves in this way and get into good trouble, not harmful trouble, not contributing to the mess, but actually moving in with the world in a way that works. So this is not a spirit of false hope and optimism. It's not based on a Pollyanna vision of reality. It's a spirit based in knowing our wholeness, the struggles we face in this world are real. The struggles so many beings in this world are facing are real. And our response to them becomes real. We cannot build our sanity or ease on the hope that everything's going to be fixed. We have to know the truth that the action of being a bodhisattva in this life now is the satisfaction that we can find. We are part of the stream of ancestors who have passed down to us a way of living with wisdom, dignity, courage, kindness, compassion, solace, and joy. And to live in this way is to live a life of good trouble, I think. So the life of a bodhisattva is the life of good trouble, necessary trouble, really necessary trouble. It's a life of Zen practice. It's a life of intimate connection, no matter what you believe or don't believe. Intimate connection with all being and the wholeness that is the deepest truth of who we are. So I hope we will continue to sit together, near and far, practice together, near and far, continue to make this place a place of refuge, sanity, humor, joy, and a hub of right action. So this is a place of welcome for everything. Okay. Okay.